I'm in the back because when I run, it looks like I'm making fun of running. But that's fine. So now, I go all the way down to the alley. We make a right. Now we're going downhill. I'm catching him. We go to the alley. My buddy Jason picks up a brick, throws it off the back of this dude's head, off the back of his noggin. He goes under a trash can. We chase the other fat Nazi up around Todd, suck his ass up, raining haymakers down on this dude, picked his ass up over my shoulders, slammed him into the window of the Bank of America, and the window shatters, the alarm goes off, 400 yards worth of cars are beeping their horn. The light turns green, we jump in the car that's been running and drive down the sidewalk and get away. And the reason we got away is because it was 1996 and nobody had a cell phone. All right, that's the point of that. I'm John Tole. God bless.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of not all ages, because this is age-restricted content, welcome to TNF Podcast. Like, comment, share, subscribe. I'm your host, the bipolar rock and roller, Mr. J. Curtis Strickland. In the house tonight, we got Mr. John Tole. He's a stand-up comedian. He is a former guitar player of One Life Crew, and he's a rabble rouser and a political prisoner of the Jinping Biden regime.
Yes.
We'll try to keep it clean in this first part, but ladies and gentlemen, like I said, Mr. John Tole, how are you doing tonight, John?
Good, sir. Thank you so much for having me on.
Dude,
I was the bassist.
The bassist, excuse me.
Yeah,
excuse me. That's right.
You were fat. You have to make that. What's that?
You were an axe man.
I have played guitar and other things. Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, somebody called it the dummy guitar.
Oh, yeah.
The bass guitar, because it's got the 4 strings or whatever.
Yeah, but my guitar only ever had 4 strings anyways, because I was such a huge Sepultura nerd. You
don't need those leads for hardcore, man. What are you talking about?
No. Well, I need 2 more strings for my fat sausage fingers to hit, ruin the song. So I was basically I can play. Let's see. Every band that I grew up loving, they always went off on stage. And it took me probably, I don't know, a decade to be able to play guitar live and not look like an asshole. But immediately I could do bass and jump around and not fuck up too bad.
Hey, I mean, that's
or
all
screw
you
up
need,
too
right?
bad. Yeah, absolutely.
So you're a Clevo guy originally then?
No, I'm from the Bay Area, Northern California.
Oh, you're from the Bay Area. Okay, just like
that's
Mr.
where
Joe Bando.
Did he grow up in the Bay Area as well?
No, I mean, he's from Clevo. Excuse me. Man, I'm getting all mixed up. He's from Clevo, and then he relocated to the Bay Area and then ended up in the LA area. But okay, so you're from Bay Area originally. Why don't you tell us about growing up in the Bay Area?
I lived in the Tri-Valley, which made up of Pleasanton, Dublin, and Livermore. We were probably 20 to 25 minutes from Oakland. We could get to the city in 45 minutes. San Jose, it took us about 45 minutes, and it was in the heyday of 80s thrash. So I got to see every great band in the world in a club less than 400 people, sometimes less than 100.
All the big 4.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. I mean, just see Chuck Billy at the mall. You know
what?
Yeah, just like, it's like I worked at a batting cage and Chuck Billy was hitting softballs in my batting cage.
Oh,
and I
wow.
delivered a pizza. Yeah, absolutely. Because I had seen him, just because he lived one town over. So we saw him all the time. So it was like, as a huge Testament nerd. And then here's the singer, and he's like in my town. He's just a normal dude. So like I delivered a pizza to the singer of Exodus because he lived in the same town. Wow. Yeah, it was awesome. So it was cool. Wild, it was like dude. They were all accessible. It's like not only they're playing small clubs, you could go see that on a weekday, but at the same time you just see them out.
And you could just go and talk to them and just chop it up with them.
Absolutely, because they've seen you. They're just used to seeing you. It's like I don't know wherever you go to shows or for comedians, whatever club that you always hang at. You're just used to. You might not know everybody, but you're used to seeing everybody.
But you've seen their faces, and you're like, oh, that guy.
But some of them, if it was not in a genre that I was like specifically that into, I might just have like a peripheral, knowledge.
Sure. Now, is that kind of how you got introduced to like heavy music, you would say, through thrash, or like what's your introduction to like music in general? Like was it playing constantly in your house, like parents growing up, older brothers, older siblings? How did your whole genesis to becoming a musician come about?
I had my parents bought me Kiss Rock and Roll Over in 1976. Kiss was big enough where your average East Coast parent wouldn't have a problem buying their 5-year-old a Kiss record. So I grew up with, all of the Kiss albums from, 76 to, my whole life listening to that. So I would say it probably went Kiss into Scorpions, Maiden, and then Motorhead, and then Overkill, and then the Vandals, 7 Seconds, Minor Threat, and then
Oh, wow.
Slapshot, all the New York hardcore. That's kind of just growing up and listening to all of it, because it was like it all shared everything. We were a crossover scene, so the punk kids were there and the metal kids were there and the hardcore kids were there. And that was kind of
Yeah,
cool.
that was like back in the day, man. You don't really see too much of that anymore. Like I had Richie from Wisdom and Chains on here, and he was like, you don't really see a lot of the like metal and hardcore and whatnot.
Yeah, I haven't been to a show for a long time. So I can imagine that in the same way, clubs or comedy scenes for that matter all kind of hang differently.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like the Comedy Store people hung here, the UCB people hung over here, and it was just two different worlds. So
Oh,
it's
they had
like
UCB up there.
nowadays I could see that. I could see like the hardcore kids not going to the punk shows hating the metalheads. They're all canceling
Which
each
is
other
so
over
weird
furs
because
and
they're
shirts.
so closely interconnected.
It's all the same thing. You love aggressive music, and so to divide it into these tiny and tinier subgenres. You definitely could do it. It's definitely it will expand your worldview to listen to all sorts of or get
Of
into as
genres.
many. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I
No,
if I'm listening, I'm at the age right now where I'm listening to pretty much AM radio, or I'm listening to probably like 80s punk is pretty much what that's all I listen to. And then maybe like 80s hits.
so what was like your most influential show as far as getting into hardcore? Like who do you remember seeing that like completely like just blew your mind that you were like, wow.
I wouldn't say it was like mind blowing, but what was awesome was in Pleasanton, in the town that I grew up in, at the Vets Hall, we had Tyrannicide, and those dudes were in my high school, and them on that bill was Breakaway, and well, actually on that bill was Rabid Lassie, which then I believe turned into Breakaway. I think that's how that worked.
I'm slightly familiar with all of those bands, but tell me
Yeah,
what that
and
was
then
like. How old were
so
you?
I would have been maybe sophomore or a junior, maybe. And to be in your town where, you might know, 10 or 15 metalheads in your school, but to be at a show where kids from all over the valley came, you're there with 100 or more kids. And that was pretty cool. And then from there, it was like you felt that energy. And then, then you went over the hill, went to the other clubs.
Nice. And
Yeah,
so
it was cool.
you said that kind of crossed over with the UCB people. And for those who don't know, UCB being Upright Citizens Brigade.
Right. Yeah.
Is that the UCB you're talking about?
No. This was just a Vets Hall in the 80s where they had shows. And
Okay.
that was, we were able to go and have that.
See, I
and
was
to be able
thinking
to,
Upright Citizens Brigade, like they have in LA. I thought maybe they had one up in San Francisco as well.
No. I was just using the Comedy Store UCB analogy to how the scenes separate to become
Gotcha.
or
Okay.
America separates into,
Oh,
corporate
different like little
fascist.
microcosms and whatnot.
Yeah,
Very cool. Very cool.
exactly.
Now, how
I'm
did you
sorry.
end up?
I'm like such a philosopher. That's what my degree's in. So it's like I'm always thinking in macro. I think in really macro terms and then really micro terms as far as just
And
like understanding things.
that totally makes sense now because I saw your interview on Lex Hunt and Fish, And I was like,
Okay.
man, this guy is on some like just next level stuff. I'm like, man, I love this. This is great.
It's very, but at the same point, it's very, like, the more macro you go into an idea, the simpler the idea becomes, and then the easier it is to digest it, or to take that simple filter and put it on every single new news thing that the culture is throwing at us. And they're throwing at us to divide, they're throwing at us to create emotive data. They figured out how to program human beings. They understand that, every one of us who has adopted this phone technology is being changed by the very technology. By definition, we're cyborgs. And so they understand that, the human animal with this technology, you can be programmed. And so depending on the kind of media that you're taking in, or what you're reading about, or, your levels of study that you're going down, at some point it gets to the macro is that we are existing inside of a totalitarian state. It's corporatism. And so you have the corporations who own our government, and they are working together in one single unit, because it starts out with the human being who votes for a government to serve them. And what's happening in every news story is about this. It's about giving the power to the state and having the state supersede the human in first position. And everything that we're seeing, and every divisive narrative, goes down to that one single movement, to make sure that the state and the corporations will always have more power than us as individual citizens, or us as a nation.
But it was never supposed to be that way, though, was it?
No, and that's where, with the technology comes the understanding of the programming and the way to, in a sense, indoctrinate. In a sense, some people get into this technology and they get super creative. Some people get into this technology, it's sex 24/7. For me, I got into this technology, I just went super into artificial intelligence and philosophy. And so we're all having a feral response as animals to this technology, and everyone's experiencing it in a different way. And so it's like you have this individual, unique experience you're having with the technology. Then the information that you take in, if all the information that you're taking in says this is the enemy, then you're going to have that as a worldview. And if you have it coming in and they say, no, this side is the enemy. And so you can see how people are being pitted against each other if they're taking in that, very programming. But it is anti-human.
It's a shame that so many people will only look to certain forms of media for the answers, because when you sift a little bit deeper, you tend to find things that are not right. And that's kind of how I had a little bit of a political and like almost paradigm shift, when it was like, oh, these people are lying to us. Why are they lying to us? Oh,
Right.
because they have an agenda to preserve, and they have things and goals that they want to accomplish that us, truth speakers and truth sayers are, we're an obstruction to them, and we're in the way.
Right, because it's your individual, at your birth, given your God-given rights that are preserved by the Constitution. And what they're doing is they're programming a certain amount of the public to come around and say, no, we need global governance, and that global governance will then circumvent the Constitution and then circumvent individual rights, human sovereignty. And then that allows the state and the corporations who own the politicians to then become our overlords, owners, as George Carlin would say.
Yeah. So you feel like we as a country are sort of in like a spiritual crisis per se?
We're in a spiritual crisis on to what is coming to be a kinetic crisis. We're starting to see that unfortunately, that anyone who exists in what they are going to label an extreme set of ideas, therefore you've been labeled extreme, we can use the powers of the state to come in and, take your speech away, put you away for the, January 6th yo-yos that got ramped up in that false flag. But you can see it's happening to them. It really is happening to them. And so what they've been able to do is, take months and months of advanced planning, set this operation out, let the people who, want to come in and break windows and smash that, they're going to do that. The feds are on the ground to help them. We've got all the cameras going. We own the footage. The stories have already been written. We've already got the good guys and the bad guys. We just let the people show up and do exactly what they knew they were going to do.
So do you think
I can guarantee this government had the information about every single person who was going to be there 3 days to a week prior to their making a decision that they were actually going to be there.
Yeah, it's a real shame because I feel like we don't live in an era of personal privacy anymore. And, based on my experience, I feel as though, the left especially does not respect that one iota. They're all up in everybody's business. They're all concerned about what everybody else is doing rather than being concerned with their own personal trajectory and their own spiritual well-being per se.
Well, I mean, I would say that, the authoritarian left is definitely, the foot soldiers on the ground and the folks who have occupied all of our major institutions and have, worked on at least 2 or 3 generations of Americans to choose to turn against the country instead of unite. And again, every narrative that serves the left also serves the corporations that fund it, also, and just reestablishes that is the linear narrative that we are existing in. And what ultimately will be undone, I believe it'll be undone through, tradition. It's going to be undone through, patriotism, love of country, traditional values, loving your family, treating your neighbor as yourself, giving before you get, give before you take, things like that. The regular order will come back, and then we'll exist in 2 different Americas, where it's the America that we grew up in, treating each other the way we've always treated each other. And then these pockets of the United States, which are just going to be anarcho-tyranny, where the criminals can do whatever they want and no one can stop them. If you do stop them, it's like back in the Bolshevik days where, as Solzhenitsyn said that, if the Bolshevik was caught with a knife, then he had to because he didn't know any better. But if you had a knife to defend yourself, you were a terrorist. And we are experiencing that same thing. The Bolshevism that worked then, those same tactics are being used in our country on a daily basis, out in the open. And it's a combination of, it's the collectivism, utopian worldview where, what's the best way to say this in the most macro way, where we're going to use corporatism / fascism, we're going to embrace communism, and then at the same time, we're going to remove the things that stand in our way, which is faith, family, and work.
Now, you and I were talking
every story, everything happening in our day-to-day basis is about that one single thing. And that's what, if anybody takes anything from this conversation, that take that worldview on the news feed that they're allowing you. It's not a feed that you're being fed, somebody else's idea. And so if you take what you're being fed and then put that over this macro idea that every single second of footage that you're seeing, every single opinion is to move human sovereignty out of the way. And the left is cool with it.
And I don't understand that because, back in the day, leftists usually tried to rail against that whole establishment, and not to say that I agree with what they believe in or their tactics, but they were pushing against that. And now they're like, we want more of this. We want more of this. And it just doesn't make any sense to me because people don't have any individual autonomy and they're forced to, oh, this is the plan. This is what we do. And I've been, like you lived in LA, I lived in LA, they're so lockstep with that. And it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, it makes sense that, for LA speaking, as an industry town, that what would you be willing to do to work in the industry? Are you willing to suspend certain rights and beliefs in order to just get along to get along? And that's what we're seeing is that, people, I could tell you the dudes who are wearing camo shorts and moving lights around, who are wearing a mask in 110-degree heat are not happy about it. And they understand that it's bullshit and they know none of it works. And everybody on the set all believes the same thing, but they can't change it.
No.
because it's the sign of acceptance of what is happening, and that
Yeah.
this merge of the state and corporations and media is one entity.
And do you feel as though that comes from outside influences, i.e., CCP, i.e., different nations around the world that want to affect change, or certain individuals that want to affect change?
Well, if you look at the world, like the globe, split into North America, Central America, South America, the Atlanticists, with Australia as our partner of Europe, and then out from Europe is we've got Russia, we've got Asia, China, and we have Africa. So if you're looking at it, two land masses fighting each other, and that the Eurasianist side owns the breadbasket of the world. What they're fighting for in Kyiv is the last point of that triangle of the breadbasket of the world. And whoever controls that region controls the planet. So I'm in a one mindset where I can see a world where the people who own our government, the people who want a one world government, and Vladimir Putin are all working together to ensure that happens.
Man, that is heavy and simultaneously really scary.
And it very well could be, because, and I always go back to, when Boris Yeltsin and Bill Clinton were boys in the 90s, they were dudes, they hung out, they were friends. And then he fucks up, Yeltsin fucks up their economy. He gets replaced by Putin. Okay. And what he tells Bill Clinton is, Putin's a good guy. He's one of us. And so now Vlad Putin, who is not a problem to the United States between 98, 96, all the way through 2008, all the way to 2016. Remember, we have Obama saying, hey, in my second term, I'll be able to work with Vlad, tell him to hang on. And all of a sudden, after Obama's done being president, now Russia is the problem. The people are against us politically are also Russian. Donald Trump is a Russian this. And so what better way to cover over this lifelong friendship that you have than to create your buddy as this world enemy that you get to kayfabe over, and in the process, you steal people's rights, liberty, all their money, and get your global government you've always wanted.
It's just so disheartening because,
is that too far-fetched?
No, it's so, like I said, it's disheartening because never did I think in my lifetime that it would ever come to this point.
No, because it was, I would say, I've been into conspiracy and, all this tinfoil stuff since the late 80s, and, reading Bill Cooper's books and understanding the process in it. And what I couldn't fathom is I understood the global idea structure, encompassing the United States people using money as the Trojan horse. Basically, we're going to trade the new international money, but it's based on the international rule of law. Your constitution's suspended. And so I understood that. What I couldn't wrap my head around was how they could foment a civil war here in the United States. And now I went from being like, there's no way. How would they do it? And now I can't unsee it, that it's a 99% possibility.
Now, what do you think in terms of, because I almost feel the same way. I feel like there's some sort of civil war that's imminent, but it's not going to be like the blue versus the gray on the battlefield. It's going to be,
no.
I feel much different. And I think technology is going to have a big play in it. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. Because, we're going to have parallel economies, because as long as one side or one way of thinking controls the money, controls the goods, and controls who can participate in society, then that's a lock hole. That's a lock. They can't get past that. So the other side, who is going to live this more traditional family values, faith first kind of lifestyle, has to come up with their own pay system, has to come up to their own banks, has to come up to a whole series and system of processes that are in place that are not going to be the same as what's being created on the other side. The other side you will be guilty before and then have to prove your innocence. The old way of life, you'll innocent until proven guilty. And we're already starting to see that.
And that's like in Solzhenitsyn, like when he talks about in the Gulag Archipelago, he's like, it's not innocent until proven guilty. It's guilty until proven innocent. And then they throw you in one of those, horrible, hence the name gulags. And, I think we started to already experience this with January 6th with people that are just sitting and rotting in jail, even to this present day. They knew, like you said, they knew who was going to be there. They knew weeks in advance, and they knew exactly what was going to happen. And these people are suffering and are being denied basic human rights because of this.
And what really exposes the diabolical planning and the targeting of the people that they lured into this scenario is the fact that, not only did we as the public have, when was that rally announced in November, wasn't it?
I believe so.
Yeah. So not only does every American citizen now have a month and a half, let's say, they have 45 days to put your life together to show up at this thing. And who else had the same 45-day leeway? And if they were on the same side as the people planning it, maybe they had 100, maybe they had 180 days of planning. Every single one of our enemies, Iran, the cartels, China, Russia, if you consider them to be an enemy, every enemy of the United States, are you telling me none of those countries sent a single agent provocateur from their country into that situation at the same time? None of them did. And we know none of them did because none of them were arrested. None of them were photographed, and none of them found out. You're asking us to believe that the enemies of the United States had an advanced knowledge that we were going to have this gnarly thing happen, and they didn't take any advantage of it? And we know for a fact that they did. And we know for a fact that the FBI knew who was there and allowed them to do it because they were helping the action that they needed to have happen.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's you take all the worst parts of 1984, Brave New World, Soylent Green, anything like that, and it's just like we're currently living in it, and it's really just
until we don't, and you have that option, because if you know that the information that's being given to both sides is to serve the oligarchy, to observe the kleptocracy that we're devolving into, then you can just choose to no longer take that information in. If you know that your online experience is being data mined and you're being manipulated by the information that you get, stop using it, stop interfacing with it, stop giving data, go radio silent, and live your happiest, healthiest life possible. And you can live in this country freely. Hopefully everybody who believes how I believe have already made that balkanized move to go to a part of the country that does represent what you believe, represents your values. I picked where I live because in 2016, this area went from red to red as fuck. And it's only gotten redder. And so I knew that. And I was like, okay, I understand. The big cities are all going to fucking collapse. Everyone's going to run to the country. And then they're going to have this slow encroachment from the city centers out to the country. So as long as you live in a place where you're surrounded with people who believe, act, and live the same way you do, for me, I'm in my 50s. I live around retired people. I don't see this. I can go on Twitter and watch, 25 fist fights in a day. That's easy to do. I've never seen one in a decade in my real life because that's not the world that I live in.
It's, here's the dilemma that I face as a single 40-year-old man is that I did, and I almost kicked myself for going back to LA. I'm like, why am I going back? Because I spent 5 years there, and then I went back for less than a year at this point. And as I like to call them, some of the whacktivists caught wind of who I was and what I was doing and made every attempt to decimate me, whether it be through character assassination, whether it be through, this is the really scary thing, is Chat GPT and AI and things that, it doesn't even matter what we say anymore. They can just manufacture it artificially, and what happens at that point? You become a target, and you're like,
Right.
it doesn't matter what you say or do, it's wrong.
Yeah, but they're only going to go after high value people with large followings, because if they can damage you inside of your large following, then that gives them more credibility. Their time that they spend on doing it is actually worth it. And it's just part of, unfortunately, that's just part of the, what do they call them? The Cheches or the Checkas, I guess, the part of the media or the part of the entertainment complex that's there to destroy. And, that's the life that they're living under, which you have to understand. And it's a waiting game in this, is that the people who hate outwardly really hate inwardly. And so as much as they're feeling these cultural wins, they're internally damaging themselves and their very psyche, on top of still not only getting the virtue and the agreement, oh yes, what you're doing and what you're believing is virtuous and you're a good citizen for doing this. You are doing everything that we demand of you in this new cult. If you ever deviate from what we're doing, we will destroy you in the same way we've allowed you to destroy your enemies. And so they're hurting themselves spiritually, they're hurting themselves physically, and they're ultimately putting themselves in a state of, jeopardy, because, it's that thing. Once the revolution, succeeds, then the people on the front line are the first to the wall. They're the first to go because they know how the sausage is made.
One dilemma that I face is that, I believe in God. I don't deride anyone for believing in the Christian God, because I happen to have a lot of friends that believe in it. I know you had mentioned on your interview that you believed in Catholicism. I'm a practicing Hare Krishna.
Okay, awesome.
This is the problem that I have, is that, I sometimes like areas that are purple, in that,
Okay.
it exists in a red state, but, I'm a creative type, and I do think the left aesthetically is still winning, as far as like, entertainment, culture, things of that nature. I still think that they have their finger on somewhat of a pulse, and so that puts me in a position. Do you disagree?
I would say, well, here's the thing. It's Scott Adams, 2 movies, 1 screen. The left is doing so well that they can operate so openly and so poorly and openly get away with it. Like, just for a simple example, here's Fetterman. He has health issues. We're going to run him as a senator. He has a problem. We know he has a problem. He's reading his answers from our computer, and we're going to put this in your face because there's nothing you can do about it because we have won. Or the other screen is, we're losing so bad, we have to try everything. If we've got to run a pudding head in a plastic suit, then that's Kamala Harris. And then if we have to, on top of that, run a corpse that's probably, Valerie Jarrett in a Joe Biden costume, all right, doing everything that they're being told to do, because they're losing it so bad. The rank and file of us voters are just seeing this for what it is. And they're doing everything in their playbook to create a mass civil disturbance so they can use the power of the state to lock everyone down and preserve their power as the time runs out in the game. That's 2 different scenarios that are the exact same fact pattern, but based on your perception of it, which one do you think is more likely?
I feel like the right and the people that are on the red side of the spectrum are getting small victories here and there, and they're starting to amass into what I believe is one large victory. But like you're saying, we're going to have to exist in these, in somewhat of a divided America someday. When do you think that is coming? Do you think that that's imminent? Do you think that that's going to be a few years down the road, a few decades down the road? How do you think that's going to play out?
It started with the Patriot Act. And so what we know, the way that the United States does its legislation is that all of the new powers that the government gave themselves with the Patriot Act also absolves all of the political crimes they created from 2001 all the way back through the 80s on their run-up. I believe that the Uni-Party, Bush into Clinton, into Bush, into Obama, that's one political party. That's one team. That even though it's been, the red side, no. This is a Uni-Party operating in a global, in a global cabal, that they've been in this together forever. And you know it because when the world went apeshit over Donald Trump, all of a sudden the Bushes are friends with the Obamas and they're friends with the Clintons and they're all friends. But then what also might be is that Donald Trump was always a friend of the Clintons. That Donald Trump was used as a political candidate to come in, give Americans the hope that they might be able to save their country in a losing thing. He gets all of the emotive data that they can mine. He's a set of jangly keys to get people's attention and to take the media, the corporations, and the Uni-Party, cement them as one thing. You've now taken the patriots, the nationalists, the people who love this country, who have traditional values, you put them in a completely other thing. It's like a balloon. If you ever squeeze a balloon, if you squeeze this side pops out. So in the rise of globalism, the answer to too much globalism is, here is a populism. Well, now populism is a big problem. We must label these people as the enemy, as domestic terrorists. And that's where we're at. Well, I believe in my heart of hearts, as much as I'm an optimist and wake up on the sunrise side of the mountain, for me, it's hard to unsee that they are succeeding, that they have captured a certain amount of the brand new voting public that will be voting for the first time in 2024, who got to, as kids, experience the riot season, COVID season, who got to experience the division in the schools, who have been, indoctrinated with collectivist crap, and they saw their older brothers have all of this excitement, and they want to be involved in it. And it's going to be like the second wave of it. It'll be potent, but it won't be as good as the first one. But they'll have so many of them that, it's hard to see them not winning again in 2024, because whoever is in charge of counting the vote, as long as you keep counting until you win, you'll win.
You think that, so back to what you were saying about Trump, do you think Trump is working in concert with them?
If you look at what they've managed to achieve in the sense of creating a subclass of human being, they call them Trumpists, or they call them whatever the labels that are put on someone to, demean you, to devalue you, to treat you as a less than, as an other, to put you in the out group that is an enemy to us. We have to attack our enemy. And so I don't know whose tweet it was where they said, we arm Ukraine because they're our allies, and we disarm Russia because they're our opponents. And that's why the government is trying to disarm us, because we are the opponents to the very government.
Lindsey Graham was probably the one that, because he's such a war hawk, and I was, it's a shame that he's from the Carolinas, but I was doing a lot of sifting and digging, and come to find out that, he's one of the biggest proponents of what's going on in Ukraine and Russia.
I would think that in order to become a political figure, in order to achieve power, in order to have fame and fortune and a following, and to be able to lead and motivate people, you have to be vetted. And that through that vetting process, he's been in politics for 30 plus years. So that's 30 plus years of money that have come in directly to keep him in power. And when those people say jump, he says, of course, that's what I'm here for.
Anyone can be trusted at this point as far as political candidacy is concerned?
I would say no, as it is right now, because I don't really believe, we saw the fuckery that happened in 2016 when Trump won. We saw the fuckery in 2020 in the midterms. And so has any election been at all believable at any time in our lives? Or has all of this stuff been casted and pre-planned, and they know, who's going to win, and they know why and how much, and this is the story we're going to tell you about how it happened, and it's all pre-planned because there's so much business attached to the illusion that there is this two-party system. But if I would say the only way that if you wanted to really throw a monkey wrench and really fuck things up really bad, have The Rock and Stone Cold run together. That would be the world's undoing. They could cut a promo. They could talk about, the hard work, the prayer, and the vitamins, and, just able just basically take out every bit of oxygen in the room and do so in a way that, would help mankind. Except both of those dudes were propped up in a system that when they say, hey, we understand you want to run, but once you get in and win, you're going to come right back in line and do what we've been doing for 200 plus years.
Yeah, it's a shame because it's like, is the voting process even worth a crap at that point? Because you want to be able to trust someone, you want to be able to have somebody do the right things for people, but then it's like, we look at Trump and I've had my skepticisms about Trump. I did vote for Trump in 2020, I will say that, but we had a period of economic prosperity, and then then they gave us all this free money, and now we're on the decline. And so It's like, is it like we're going to bring in somebody, i.e. Trump again, or somebody that will bring back that economic prosperity so that we do have that ebb and flow?
You're going to get, if they do allow him, or if they do allow, a GOP light rhino to come in and give the illusion of operating from that side, they're still going to overspend. They're still going to print a ton of money. They're still going to support the military industrial complex. They're still going to support the IRS. They're still going to support the tech companies censoring their opponents. And so unfortunately, it's going to give America a breather. Look at it like a fight in the late rounds. Right now we're just getting pummeled. They're devaluing the money. They're creating a catastrophe. We have to print more money to take care of that problem, and we take your rights away. Here comes a new president. Oh, we've got the chance. America starts roaring again. Uh-oh, here's a new disease. Here's more printing of money. Here's more control. And because it worked so well the first time, you have to believe that they're going to do it again. And so if the sickness happens on the watch of a Republican president, then now you have two Republican presidents in a row who are at the helm when we're attacked with a bioweapon. At some point that narrative has already been cooked in, and the people who support them are our domestic terrorist enemies. I mean, if that's where they're going, that's where all of this is going.
So who do you think is going to be ran in 2024? Who do you think their horses are going to be?
I think that you might see on the Democratic side, you might see them abandon Biden and actually have a primary process and try to find a true leader of the party, or they're just going to run them. And then because Kamala is what they've wanted the entire time. And on the GOP side, you're going to have, of course, Trump, DeSantis are going to beat each other up. And, whoever loses is going to be like a Perot and take part of the vote away from one side. Either Trump supporters, he doesn't get in, so they don't even vote. I'm out. Fuck it. This is a waste. And so the Democrats win. Or, basically that's not what I see. It's like they're going to split the vote, and then the Democrats win. And then if you were looking from an evil genius plotting, then Hillary Clinton would be the nominee again. That it would be Hillary Clinton 2 versus Trump 2, and she wins.
I almost feel like they will try to run Hillary again. I think they're so
why
desperate
not?
At this point.
They're either so desperate or they're winning so much that she would do exactly what they need them to do.
Oh God.
Isn't it crazy? It's so crazy that we have this fact pattern that's presented to us that allows us to kind of put the dots together and say, yikes, you kind of can't but unsee it, the possibility of it, you know?
Now, what do you think, aside from unplugging from media, and I can't help but talk about these things sometimes. Like I said, I've usually tried to deviate from political subjects on this show. I always
Okay.
wanted to make it well, I always wanted to make it apolitical, but because it's in the collective ether, it's like you kind of have to talk about it sometimes. So what do we as citizens do in addition to unplugging from media, and say we exist in these separate uh sovereign nations, say the United States is divided up, which like you and I have said seems to be imminent. What else can
Right.
we do?
Nothing. Treat your neighbor as you would treat yourself, and then treat yourself really well, and live a happy, productive life. Learn to love to work. Have a passion that you wake up and you love to do. That is your very reason that you rise out of bed every morning. And very, very simply put, to live in that kind of lifestyle where you're very grateful to be awake, you're very grateful to be alive, to have your health, to be able to move around, to be able to live. You have a roof over your head, you can feed yourself, you're relatively safe, and enjoy that life. And, it'd be like if you just went off and lived in the woods while the world turned to shit around you. If you didn't see it, never heard about it, would it really have happened?
Yeah, it's like burying your head in the sand almost.
Oh my, yeah, you can say that, but it's like a very powerful thing that that the folks who are moderates or center right or libertarians would be to just disconnect entirely. No polling, don't answer questions online, don't put your opinion, just go radio silent. And they won't know what's lurking in the under bubbles of what's truly happening in America, because they'll have no touch on it. And they'll also have no control over the way you think, because you're not indoctrinating yourself with the media that you are being fed.
Yeah. I mean,
you just turn it off. You just stop watching, and it's easier said than done. It's you have to just choose to do it. It's like saying, "Oh,
yeah,
I'm just gonna."
I mean, I definitely, still follow some of them. I still watch Tim Pool from time to time. I still watch, I just got a subscription to Compound Media, because those guys, I love those guys, because they will just take the piss out of everything,
Sure.
everything. And they will talk about subject matters that aren't related to politics, and just point out the absurdity and everything. And so commentators and pundits and media content creators like that, I can really get behind and appreciate.
Well, I like a person living. I don't really engage much with Tim Pool's content, but I do like the fact that he moved out. I believe he like in West Virginia on a compound with a lot of land, and that's super cool to choose to live in a totally radically different way than folks who are just living in a major media center on top of each other, where it's super expensive, super dangerous, and nobody's getting along. But you're there because you're part of this media collective.
Right.
And so to choose to do something different, that's for me. I mean, I look at him and I'm impressed by that.
Yeah. He's created his own little like subsection of the state country, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, he has his plot, and he has his fans, and he's doing really well online. And I imagine that they have the user data, not only the user data that he has on his own audience, but the people who run those platforms that he's so famous on have all of his customer data as well.
A Facebook user here says Tim Pool built Chicken City. Say no more.
Is that what he called his chicken ranch? And again, now he's got sustainable.
So. I know he talks about his chickens all the time, and how the roosters and chickens are all procreating, and how I guess they would kill them like on site and then eat them.
I mean, isn't that why they're there? I mean, I'm fortunate enough where I live. In the morning I can hear cows, roosters going off, and then gunfire. Pretty awesome. It's awesome. It's
I mean,
America.
as a vegan, ethically, I disagree with that. Also, it's part of my spiritual path. I believe, do no harm to living entities.
Okay.
Bando and I had this discussion. Different levels of sentience within human beings. He's like, well, you're killing vegetables and you're destroying whole ecosystems, and I'm like, well, at the same time, you have to consider what it is that you're putting into your body. You're essentially imbibing another consciousness, and
Right.
that death surrounds that. That's just my 2 cents. That's what I think. I don't deride anybody. I'm not like a Gary
Sure.
Yourofsky type vegan where it's like that guy is obnoxious and would make anybody not want to be a vegan. Personally, I just, like you say, doing well unto your neighbors. Like I just prepare vegan
Sure.
food, and sometimes I don't even say it's vegan. I'm like, hey, here's some mock chicken salad or chicken salad or whatever.
That's
Enjoy,
awesome.
and people are
Sure.
like, wow, this is really good. And then maybe I'll tell them it's vegan, maybe I won't. So I guess the biggest thing to me, as far as that's concerned, is like I said, my spiritual path supersedes any of my personal beliefs. And
Okay.
so, um,
Do you
how do
like
you
the
feel about
order? Do you like the order of faith, family, work?
that? Yeah,
Okay, that works. Yeah,
yeah,
that's a tenet of our faith of Catholicism.
yeah,
And so it seems to be that when I went on this philosophical journey of simplicity, that realizing that life, whether it's you and I, whether it's an animal, whether it's a plant, we're all existing as life together, life that's living, and that
yeah,
in as much as we sacrifice ourselves for the good of others, that those vegetables are sacrificing themselves for the good of all of us, that it is all one life thing that's happening, right? And in
yeah,
this one thing that is happening, it is the ever continuing of this ever present now, and that in through simplicity, everything can be broken down into mathematical concepts, that the mathematics that describe the scaffolding that surrounds nothingness is the same mathematics that surround the idea of fullness, and that emptiness and fullness are the same thing. Each one describes the other, and the math that it makes up and encompasses those very things are the same math, and that in that same math there is an order of operations: multiplication, divide, add, subtract, and those have to
yeah,
go in that order or none of this works. And so if you
yeah,
take that very simplistic idea of order and put it on top of the world that we're experiencing in, then you can answer every single world problem immediately by understanding that it is disordered, and that the only way to battle disorder is to have no disorder within your own self.
yeah. And I
I eat
will
a lot
say
of
that.
mushrooms.
Yeah, I noticed you were talking about the whole microdosing thing, and
Oh
that's
yeah.
something I've never really experienced. You had mentioned in a previous interview that you had done that pretty consistently for a period of time. Why don't you talk
hmm
about that a little bit? Like what does that do for a human being?
So in my experiment of 110 days of microdosing, sometimes I always say sometimes too little, sometimes way too much. But I went through this day in, day out existence where I was going to daily mass. I was coming back and having the psychedelics. Once I was experiencing the psychedelics, I would go outside and do something physical and understand that you're out and about in public. You're all part of this life that's happening. You're in nature. You're in the same part of that, that you're part of this mathematical constant that's being around us. And then I realized that all of this is about order, all of this is about mathematics, that I started to study new geometry by Ramon Lull, who's the godfather of AI. And he has a way of looking at reality and looking at reality through mathematics, but using it in English and and putting things in order. So as long as you maintain the order, then you will not have a problem of this life that we're living or where we're going next.
That is That is so heavy, man.
I don't know,
It's
but it is.
well, no, I mean it is because most people within our school of thought probably wouldn't subscribe to psychedelics or psilocybin mushrooms. And like I said, here's the biggest contention that I have with the quote unquote red states and the right is that I don't feel like I fit in. I
Okay,
feel like I do things very unconventionally. I don't have the uniform. I don't have the fishing hat and the wraparound sunglasses and the polo shirt. It's just not me, man. I
sure.
don't. But simultaneously, like you said, let's take the Marine Corps for example, because I was in the Marines. They
Uh-huh.
instill God, country, core, and you
Right.
you could look at it like what did you say? Faith, family, and what else?
Faith, family, work.
Yeah, I mean, God, country, core. That
Right.
it's you're serving God. You have a respect for your country and your countrymen, and those collectively around you, your neighborhood, your family systems, things like that. I feel like they're onto something. I feel like you're onto something.
Well, and that where it allows them to have a very, very simple framework, and in that simple framework, it's easy to exist in because you're going to be put in your situation. You're training for shit flying at you. Death is certain. Combat, and if they don't simplify your life and give you a ready-made solution for the shit you're about to encounter, then you're going to shit the bed and lose when the pressure gets bad. And
Yeah.
so if they can instill in you a very, very simple program, a program nonetheless, I can, as much as I think of myself as an individual philosopher, there's no different. I've programmed myself through the idea of understanding geometry in a different way, to understand, language in a different way, so that I can create my own media and understand the bigger picture that's happening around us. And so, for that being said, the trade-off is when I'm very, very focused on the truth and order that, truth be told, I don't want to leave my house. I don't go
Yeah.
out. I would, if I'm being honest, I'd rather sit at home, crack open a beer and watch YouTube, watch someone, teach me about something, then go out and hang out with 200 people at a comedy show.
Oof.
And that's my job.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
sucks. And it's
I totally
totally
understand. I'm not a collectivist person. I'm kind of a lone wolf, and a lot of people saps my energy sometimes, and but I
totally
realize that in my industry, I have to be around people. I have to deal with people.
right. But I mean, and what I was fortunate enough, in my super active time doing stand up, where I got to watch how certain comics operated within the system. I got to watch Richard Lewis. Richard Lewis from Curb.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so that dude is working at the Addison Improv. He's doing 2 shows a night, and I was I was watching, and so I was watching. I watched all 5 shows, and what he did is he got picked up at the hotel probably 5 to 7 minutes before he went on stage. They drove him from the hotel to the club. He got out of the car. He walked through the kitchen, through the showroom, on stage, did his hour plus, and walked back out to the building, to the car, and back to the hotel, and never talked to a single human being.
Wow.
And I was
How do you
like,
feel
holy
about that
shit,
though?
that's pop. Oh, I love it. That's the best. That, in my mind, for me, if I'm being completely honest, that's the kind of entertainment that I would love to do. Show up. No one knows who I am. No one's looking for me. I just show up and do my show and I leave. And so that's
Some
why
people
the,
would
the
argue
best
though
shows.
that might be a little bit, dare I say, standoffish.
What are we? I imagine. See, this is the thing where I look at stand up and music in the same thing. Okay, where you can be on stage with a band and you can get people to just go off, lose their mind, mosh, pile on stage dive. The energy in the room is an absolute pandemonium. And in stand-up, I can get on stage and I can treat the audience as an amplifier. That the ideas that I put forth in them are going to put them in a position where they're going to respond in a way that I know that they're gonna. And then once I have the amp tuned, then basically I am just a one-man punk rock band with no gear. And instead of people moshing, they're laughing. And they're having a time that they didn't think they were going to have. Now I'm fortunate enough, I get to work. Most of the shows I do are with people over the age of 50. I don't know, for whatever reason, I do really well with people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. I guess because it's irreverent. It's hardcore in a non-hardcore place. It's I can do my style of stand-up in a room full of boomers, and they love it. And they don't know me. They don't know none of this music stuff.
9 or 10 o'clock, and then everybody's happy.
That's it. And then so in the same way that Richard Lewis can get up and talk to nobody in the show, Doug Benson can go do a tour where all of his shows are at 420. Everybody has this ability to do this. They do the specific show they're built for. Yeah. And that's like, I know there was a comic that I opened up with who was like a Christian comic, or was a Christian comic, huge draw, and could sell, he could sell anywhere from, 1,000 to 3,000 tickets in a night. But if you asked him honestly about the kind of show he wanted 120 people. His perfect show is 120 people in a small room with a low ceiling, with a short stage, where you can really connect. But he's so big that he sells thousands of tickets, and you're not going to not make that money. But at the same time, you're making all that money, but the show that you really, really want to do is not that show.
That's true. Well, hey, we want to talk a little bit more about your stand-up comedy trajectory.
Sure.
We want to talk about One Life Crew. We are going to end this live interview, and we're going to be able to watch the full interview on Rumble. As you can see there, it says follow on Rumble at TNF Podcast. If you notice the little ticker at the bottom. And I've got merch for sale. Let me throw that up real quick on Hell's Heart. co.bigcartel.com. We're actually doing a benefit for HR from the Bad Brains. He's experiencing
that's awesome.
He's experiencing, it's all the conditions are not awesome. He's experiencing these awful headache pains, and he started to GoFundMe. He's not able to tour this summer. Right. And so Hell's Heart introduced limited edition Bad Brains shirt that HR actually can't promote because he doesn't completely own the rights to it, but we did receive HR's promo team's blessing. So in the second part of the interview, I can throw up a picture of that. But real quick, before we jump off live here, why don't you tell us, promote some of the things that you've got going on? I know you have a YouTube channel. I know you have, your stand-up. Where are you going to be performing at? What do you got going on?
To be honest, because of the way that I think, and I don't know if you've ever looked at my Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or YouTube, it doesn't matter what I create. There's very little traction to it. And so unfortunately, in this world where everybody's building these careers based on these platforms, I don't have those platforms. And so the only thing that I can promote is that, follow my Instagram, and I have live dates. What I've been doing now is that my shows are always kind of the backbone. The bigger pieces will always be there. I'll always play the hits, but then you'll never know when I'm doing something that I've only told once, something I'm never going to tell again, something I'm trying out. And then I go ahead and record those shows, and I put those shows out as albums, and it's on Spotify. And that's pretty much my main platform is Spotify. All the PITBOSS, the PC Death Squad, all my stand-up is there. And so if you go to either Bandcamp, the 4256 Bandcamp, or look up, PITBOSS 2000 and PC Death Squad, or my stand-up on Spotify, and listen and share. And that, helps as much as I can get, this out. As far as YouTube goes, nothing I put up. They're like, nope. Like I get an email, they're like, sorry, you were talking about this a year ago, down. And you're just like, okay, I get it. I'm not playing that game, and I understand those rules are those rules, and this is how it goes. And I can't begrudge anyone because it's their business.
Right. And I feel like we're totally fighting an uphill battle, which is why I want to put the second part of this interview on Rumble. Glitches.
Parallel economy. That's right. Parallel economy. Yeah. That's Rumble. That's Bongino. That's that line of thinking that as America splits, as it fractures, we're still going to have to be able to move stuff around, pay for things, and provide our own safety. And so great. That's awesome that you are able to use that secondary platform. So cool.
And likewise with Bandcamp and Spotify, I would love to get some of my stuff on up on those platforms as just, pure audio versions. But well, John Tole, this has been amazing, man. I think you'd be a great guest for Tim Pool or somebody like Rogan or someone like that. I think it'd be fantastic.
I would love the opportunity to talk about these very, very obvious things that are happening to all of us and what we can do to alleviate the pressure that's being put on America to split. Or, it's happening to every country. It's happening to every country that is aligned with this corporate interest. Every country is treating their own citizens worse than they've ever been treated.
Yeah, it's a real shame.
It sucks, but
John Tole, thank you so much. Like I said, everybody, like, comment, share, subscribe. Please, please. I love YouTube too, and I love when people check out the content and all of the amazing guests that I have on here. We're going to send you out with a little outro, and the next part of this interview will be up on Rumble tomorrow morning. So please check that out. It may even be up tonight if I can get it up, but it will definitely be up tomorrow morning. Once again, John Tole, thank you so much, sir. Will be part 2 on Rumble, TNF Podcast. Thanks so much.